Let's look at the national papers today, and we're joined now by Andrew Pegler, who's the editor of Plain English Editing and Copywriting. Andrew Pegler, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Swine flu has returned. You thought you got rid of it. It's back.
I know. I thought we did. Well, for me, the most impressive thing this morning is the front page of the Herald Sun. I don't know if we can get an image of that up, but I think if you can, as an editor of a tabloid, get the word trapped and pig in massive typeface on the front of your newspaper, you know, your job's assured for the next year.
You're right.
But obviously there's a more serious issue, and that is that the swine flu has returned. That we've got 2 more cases that have popped up in Melbourne. A 10-year-old girl who was in the same class as the other 2 little guys, so it's actually now gone from one person to another, and a 25-year-old guy that was just returned from Los Angeles. So, yeah, swine flu is up and running.
I had one bulletin yesterday in Melbourne saying Melbourne has now become the swine flu capital of Australia, almost proudly declaring.
The most livable city and and we're doing very well. But for me, I think well, look, I'm lucky enough to have 2 young children. I don't have 4 like the family that is presently being locked up for 2 weeks has. And I think, as you said, Virginia, they may die of something else. They might end up killing each other after that. I feel terribly sorry for that family, just for the inconvenience. But if they're watching, keep it up, guys.
The tough thing now is that there's been so many dire warnings during the first wave of understanding and knowledge and reporting about this issue that we're on the border of a cry wolf situation, aren't we?
Well, we are.
A whole lot of us are going to go blah, blah, blah. You told us that a few weeks ago and nothing happened.
Well, look, it's an interesting point. The WHO are really left with no choice. They have to make these decisions based on empirical evidence, because we'll all look back, and if things are not acted on, we'll blame them. If they're overacted on, we'll blame them. They're sort of, you know, they can't put a foot right. Ultimately, though, they've got to make decisions based on evidence. And I think, you know, closing the school, I don't think is a bad idea, the Clifton High School. I don't think it's overreacting, and the sort of language that's coming out of the Victorian government, it's sort of this gentle, oh look, it mightn't be a bad idea if we close the school. And the way they're sort of gently introducing this.
The way that an airline pilot talks to you from the cockpit when there's something wrong. You know, when the pilot says, oh, ladies and gentlemen, I'll copy that then.
You might want to put your seatbelts on. Yeah. And can you swim? You know? Yeah, but anyway, that's that one.
Well, we're talking about that later this morning, and that'll be a question for the medical officials about just how seriously we take these warnings this time. Another story in the Australian you're interested in? Yeah,
the FBI have foiled a plot by 4 largely marginalised, dissatisfied petty criminals, one of which I think had 27 convictions for whatever. All have become Muslims, met in jail and got together, got particularly angry at the US government for what it's been doing around what it perceives around the world, and decided that they would take out a couple of synagogues in New York. The sting was, though, one of the guys that they were buying the stuff from was an FBI agent. Now, the interesting thing for me in all of this is, I don't know, I haven't fired a surface-to-air missile, and I don't know about you guys. What you guys do on the weekends, your business, but I would imagine there'd be quite a few accuracy challenges. And they were just, I think, going to turn up to this US Air Force base and sort of point this thing in the general direction of very fast-moving planes and see if they could get them. I mean, the words not a lot of planning come to mind. Numbnut is another one.
So you don't think it's that remarkable that this lot was tracked for a year, monitored for a year by the CIA and then caught in the act?
Look, I think it's a fascinating story, and it shows that actually the New York police and the FBI are across this sort of stuff. The most interesting thing, I think, is that homegrown terror hasn't become a major issue in the US. I would have thought at this point that, you know, there's 250 million people in the US, a lot of them are angry, you know, and there'd be, you know, a couple of 100,000 that would be prepared to do this sort of stuff, but it hasn't happened, except for the Timothy McVeigh thing, of course, in 1995, but, you know, other than that, yeah. Yeah, and as an example of insider intelligence work, it's probably one of the more reassuring cases that we've read of in some time. Absolutely.
Yeah, they got there first.
Yeah, because we've heard so many bad things about the ability of these agencies to monitor groups like this, and it's just comforting to know that they can actually monitor someone and catch them in the act.
In the act, we actually placed the bombs, these so-called bombs that were inert, so they did it.
Now, also in the Australian, closer to home,
Yeah.
uranium mining over in the west.
It's back. The 3 mines thing's out the window. We're about to get the biggest mine in Australia for the last 20-odd years in Western Australia, which probably needs the dough at this stage. It's a $17 billion investment, and I think the figures are they'll expect it to return around 30-odd billion over its life. I heard somewhere that I think there's going to be up to 60 uranium mines or whatever over the next 6 years opened across the world. You know, uranium is sort of, oh well, this hydrocarbons thing's a bit of a stinker, why don't we have a look at another option?
Yeah, you'd have to say that conditions are right for something like this to come to fruition now. With the financial crisis and concerns about pollution, conditions have changed, and opinion is there for something like this to happen.
Well, absolutely, and apparently there was a couple of uranium mining companies that actually put a $500 million bet pretty much on the Western Australian government changing its policy because they bought a mine in anticipation before the election. Big punt, it came off for them. But there's all these other sort of cleaner options coming up. I was reading the other day that there are plans to harvest solar energy from space and then send that via microwaves to transmitters to Earth and put that into the grid. So, I mean, the future is looking good. Hopefully uranium is a bit of a stopgap. You know, I wouldn't want to...
As long as there's the money for that kind of R&D into the method that you described there,
Well,
Andrew.
these things are always under...
I don't know where that comes from.
War and fear.
Yeah. Why do you have to harness it from space? We get plenty of it right here.
No, we got clouds. 24 hours a day, sunlight, you know? And if you've got solar panels the size of New Mexico up there, which is what they're planning on doing, I mean, I don't want to get too Star Trek on you at this time of the morning, you guys.
Too late, you've already revealed yourself clearly as an absolute Star Trek nerd, and that's why this story appeals to you, but that's all right.
My apologies.
Bring us up to date on this continuing court case where a gambler has been suing Crown Casino. A remarkable story, this one.
It is. I mean, I've been most interested by this one because the sort of figures that this guy, property tycoon Harry Kavakis, I apologise, Harry.
That's right.
He was, you know, doing things like making $300,000 bets at baccarat table. He, at one point, won $10 million over a weekend and then lost $9 million a week later. These sort of figures, it's almost like the stimulus package stuff. It's almost mind-boggling, you know. And he was a property tycoon. He's clearly not a fool. He's made a lot of money. But interestingly enough, he's been diagnosed, as they call it, a pathological gambler. I mean, the guy literally probably would see 2 flies and bet on which one's going to fly away first. And, you know, this is an all-consuming illness. And Crown, it would seem, didn't really take this into account. Were a bit more interested in seeing what they could get out of him. And I think it kind of stinks, you know, and I think if he wins this case, it'll be a win for the people.
Andrew, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you guys. See you later.